In the K-pop industry, the standard exclusive contract runs 7 years. For Stray Kids, that clock started ticking in 2018, which means 2025 marked the point where renewal conversations shifted from hypothetical to urgent. And here's the thing, JYP Entertainment already knows but probably doesn't love admitting. Stray Kids aren't just another act on the roster. They're a self-producing group that writes, composes, and arranges their own music, sells millions of albums per release, fills stadiums across 4 continents, and commands a fandom, Stay, whose loyalty isn't built on hype, but on years of genuine connection. That combination doesn't just make them valuable, it makes them rare. The kind of rare that rewrites what a contract is worth. So what does the actual data say about where Stray Kids stand heading into these negotiations? What numbers, milestones, and market signals suggest their value has grown far beyond what anyone, including JYP, may have initially projected? We pulled together 7 key pieces of evidence, starting from number 7 and building to the single most significant factor at number 1. Let's get into it. Number 7. Explosive global popularity. There's a simple rule in the entertainment business. The more markets you own, the more you're worth. And by that measure, Stray Kids aren't just doing well, they're operating on a scale that most K-pop acts never reach. Let's start with the raw geography. Stray Kids have established deeply rooted fan bases across North America, Latin America, Europe, Japan, Southeast Asia, and Oceania. The United States is consistently identified as their largest international market, where American stays serve as a primary engine behind their chart dominance. Japan represents another powerhouse territory, driving significant streaming traffic and physical album sales, reinforced by localized releases and sold-out stadium shows at venues like Tokyo Dome. In Latin America, Brazil and Mexico have emerged as enormous hubs of fan activity. Arenas in these countries regularly sell out, and Brazilian stays in particular are known for organizing some of the most effective online streaming and voting campaigns in the entire K-pop fandom ecosystem. Europe adds yet another layer. France, Germany, and the United Kingdom all host substantial fan communities, with Paris becoming a landmark city in Stray Kids' touring history. Then there's Indonesia, India, the Philippines, and Australia, each contributing growing audiences that continue to expand the group's footprint. Now, why does this geographic spread matter for a contract negotiation? Because reach equals revenue potential. A group that only sells in South Korea and Japan is a regional asset. A group that sells out stadiums on 4 continents is a global brand. And when you're a global brand, the licensing deals, the merchandising rights, the touring guarantees, all of those numbers multiply. JYP Entertainment knows this. Every new market Stray Kids penetrate means another revenue stream that has to be factored into any contract discussion. Here's where the data gets genuinely impressive. The IFPI, the International Federation of the Phonographic Industry, publishes an annual global artist chart. This isn't a popularity poll. It's a data-driven ranking based on music consumption worldwide, physical sales, digital sales, and streaming combined. Stray Kids first appeared on this chart at number 7 in 2022. The following year, they jumped to number 3. In 2024, they placed 5th, and in 2025, they climbed to number 2, their highest position ever. That means for 4 consecutive years, Stray Kids have ranked among the top 10 most consumed musical acts on the entire planet, not in K-pop, on Earth. They're charting alongside names like Taylor Swift, Drake, and The Weeknd. For a self-producing group from a mid-sized South Korean label, that trajectory isn't just noteworthy, it's historically significant. Forbes reinforced this reality by naming Stray Kids the number 1 K-pop group of 2025, a designation based on global influence, streaming performance, digital sales, and sustained year-long impact. That's not a fan-voted award or a trending hashtag. It's an assessment from one of the world's leading business publications using measurable commercial criteria. Their digital footprint tells the same story. As of mid-2026, Stray Kids' official Instagram account sits at over 33 million followers. Their YouTube channel has surpassed 24.7 million subscribers. These aren't vanity metrics. They represent a direct pipeline to tens of millions of potential consumers across every content vertical: video music, behind-the-scenes content, variety-style programming, and promotional campaigns. For any label calculating the commercial upside of keeping an act under contract, an audience of that size is a built-in marketing infrastructure that would cost hundreds of millions to build from scratch. What makes Stray Kids' global popularity particularly relevant to their contract value is the nature of how it was built. This isn't a fan base that materialized overnight from a viral moment or a single hit song. Stay grew organically over years, fueled by Stray Kids' direct involvement in their own music production, consistent content output, and a relationship with fans that operates more like a community than a typical artist-audience dynamic. Bang Chan's regular live streams, the group's transparent creative process through series like SKZ Record and SKZ Player, and their willingness to experiment across genres, from hard-hitting hip-hop to EDM to rock, have created a fandom that doesn't just consume content, they invest in it emotionally. And emotional investment translates directly to commercial loyalty. Fans who buy every album version, attend every concert, purchase every piece of merchandise, and stream relentlessly. There's also a structural factor that amplifies their global value. Stray Kids have two Australian-Korean members, Bang Chan and Felix, who are fluent English speakers. In an industry where language barriers can limit Western market penetration, this gives Stray Kids a natural advantage in connecting with English-speaking audiences across the US, the UK, Australia, and beyond. It's not just about interviews and variety show appearances, it's about the way English-speaking members lower the entry barrier for new fans, discovering the group through social media, reaction videos, or concert footage. This linguistic bridge has been a quiet but consistent accelerator of their international growth. So when we talk about the value of Stray Kids' 2027 contract, global popularity isn't just one factor among many, it's the foundation. Every other metric we'll discuss, album sales, touring revenue, brand deals, and streaming numbers, is downstream of the fact that this group has built one of the most geographically diverse, emotionally committed, and commercially active fan bases in modern music, and they did it in under a decade. But raw popularity is only part of the equation. The real question is whether fans are actually spending money, and the answer to that starts with album sales. That's exactly where we're headed next. Number 6. Extraordinary album sales. In the music industry, there's no clearer indicator of commercial demand than album sales. Streams can be passive, social media followers can be casual, but when someone walks into a store or clicks purchase and buys a physical album, often in multiple versions, that's an act of deliberate spending. And on that metric, Stray Kids are operating at a level that directly reshapes what their contract is worth. Let's put the career numbers on the table first. As of August 2026, Stray Kids have surpassed approximately 40 million total album shipments across South Korea and Japan. That's a staggering figure for any musical act, and it places them among the highest-selling groups in K-pop history. Their cumulative domestic sales in South Korea alone have reached approximately 39.1 million copies. To put that in perspective, that's a number most groups never approach even after 15 or 20 years of activity. Stray Kids achieved it in roughly 8. The individual album trajectory is where this story really reveals itself. In 2022, Ordinary, their 6th mini-album, sold around 2.2 million copies domestically and became their first Billboard 200 #1. It was also the first Stray Kids release to surpass 1 million pre-orders, a signal that the fandom had crossed a critical mass threshold. Later that same year, Maxident pushed the boundary further, moving roughly 3.8 million copies and earning triple million seller certification within its first month. Then came 2023, and everything scaled up again. Five Star, their third full-length album, moved over 5.3 million copies in South Korea, one of the highest-selling K-pop albums of the entire year, and a quintuple million certification. Rockstar, which followed later in 2023, added another 4.3 million copies. In a single calendar year, Stray Kids moved nearly 10 million albums domestically across just 2 releases. That's not a spike, that's a new baseline. The momentum didn't slow in 2024. 8, their 9th mini-album, sold approximately 3.2 million copies, continuing their streak of Billboard 200 #1 debuts. The special album, Hop, marketed as an SKZ Hop tape, contributed another 2.3 million copies, earning double million certification. Combined, 2024 delivered roughly 6.5 million copies in annual sales. For most acts, that would be a career peak. For Stray Kids, it was a relatively quieter year, and it still produced numbers that most groups only dream about. 2025 brought another escalation. Karma, their 4th full-length studio album, became the top-selling K-pop album of the year on South Korea's Circle chart, moving approximately 3.8 million copies. Their follow-up, Do It, added further volume. By the end of 2025, the group's annual domestic sales reached roughly 7.8 million copies, a meaningful year-over-year increase that confirmed the growth trend was not flattening. And then 2026 arrived. In August, Stray Kids released This and That, their 10th mini-album. First week sales came in at approximately 3.28 million copies, making it their 4th release to cross the triple million in 1 week threshold. That single data point carries enormous weight. First week sales reflect pure demand from the existing core fanbase, and the fact that Stray Kids can consistently clear 3 million copies in 7 days means Stay's purchasing power isn't declining, it's holding steady or growing. Now, let's talk about what these sales look like in the United States, because that market carries outsized influence in contract valuations. According to Luminate's 2025 year-end report, Stray Kids were the only artist, not the only K-pop artist, the only artist, period, to place 3 albums in the top 10 best-selling CD albums in the US that year. Karma landed at number 2 with 524,000 copies sold. Do It hit number 3 with 456,000 copies, and Hop, which was released the previous year, still maintained enough momentum to place 6th with 223,000. Only Taylor Swift's The Life of a Showgirl outsold them on the CD chart. In the broader total album sales category, combining physical and digital, Karma ranked 2nd with 585,000 units, and Do It placed 4th with 460,000 units. Stray Kids became the first K-pop act to surpass 1 million total album units sold in the US in a single year. Again, in 2025, no other K-pop group matched that. They stood alone. But here's a detail that might matter even more than new release sales when it comes to contract negotiations: catalog performance. JYP Entertainment's second quarter 2026 earnings report revealed that shipments of Stray Kids' older albums, releases that were no longer in active promotion cycles, increased 3.5-fold compared to the same period in 2025, jumping from 120,000 copies to 420,000 copies. The company attributed this to an expanding core fanbase, noting that these older titles continued to perform well in North America and Europe, even when Stray Kids weren't actively promoting new music. Why does catalog growth matter? Because it's the clearest possible evidence of a fan base that's still growing, not just maintaining. New fans don't just buy the latest release, they go back and collect the discography. When catalog sales spike like that, it means the funnel of new listeners converting to committed buyers is widening. For a label trying to calculate the long-term return on a contract extension, catalog growth is arguably more valuable than first-week sales because it demonstrates durability. It says this group's audience isn't peaking, it's compounding. And there's a qualitative factor worth highlighting. Stray Kids release their albums in multiple physical versions, each with different photo books, photo cards, and collectible inserts. Stay doesn't just buy one copy. Dedicated fans frequently purchase multiple versions, both for collecting purposes and to boost chart rankings. This behavior is well documented across K-pop, but the scale at which Stay engages in it is notable. It speaks to a level of fan investment that goes beyond casual listening. This is a community that treats album releases as events, not transactions. When you stack all of this together, 40 million career shipments, consistent multi-million first-week sales, dominance on both domestic and international charts, growing U.S. market share, and rising catalog demand, the album sales story becomes a contract negotiation story. Every unit sold is revenue, every unit sold is proof of demand, and every upward trend in those numbers is leverage that Stray Kids can bring to the table when 2027 arrives. But albums are only one revenue category. The real money in modern music often comes from putting bodies in seats. And Stray Kids' touring numbers? That's an entirely different conversation. Number 5. High-value world tours. If album sales tell you how much fans are willing to spend from home, touring tells you how much they're willing to spend in person, on tickets, travel, merchandise, food, and accommodation. And in the modern music industry, touring is often where the real money is. For Stray Kids, the touring numbers have escalated so rapidly that they now represent one of the most powerful arguments for an enormous contract valuation. Let's trace the progression because the growth curve matters. In 2022 and 2023, Stray Kids ran their second major world tour, the Maniac Tour, spanning 42 shows across Asia, North America, and Australia. That tour grossed approximately $71.5 million. At the time, that was a significant figure for a fourth-generation K-pop group still building their international concert infrastructure. The shows were held in arenas, venues with capacities typically ranging from 10,000 to 20,000 seats. Strong numbers, but still within the established arena circuit that other top-tier K-pop groups were also navigating. And then came Dominate. The Dominate World Tour launched in August 2024 and ran through mid-2025, covering 54 shows across 5 continents. This was no longer an arena tour. 27 of the venues were stadiums. The shift from arenas to stadiums isn't just a matter of bigger buildings. It represents a fundamentally different tier of commercial operation. Stadium shows involve higher production costs, but they also generate exponentially more revenue per date. And Stray Kids didn't just book stadiums, they filled them. The total gross revenue for the Dominate Tour reached approximately $260 to $263 million, with nearly 2 million tickets sold across the full run. According to Billboard's Top Tours 2025 year-end chart, which tracked a specific window from October 2024 to September 2025, Stray Kids ranked number 10 globally, grossing $185.7 million from 31 performances and approximately 1.3 million tickets within that tracking period alone. That made them the highest-ranking K-pop act on Billboard's year-end touring chart. Polestar, the industry's other major concert data authority, ranked the Dominate Tour second among all global concert tours in 2025 based on average ticket revenue per region, trailing only Beyoncé. Let that comparison land for a second. In the global touring market, Stray Kids were running second to Beyoncé, not second among K-pop acts, second overall. The specific venues tell their own story. At SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, Stray Kids played 2 sold-out shows on May 31st and June 1st, 2025, becoming the first fourth-generation K-pop group to headline that venue. At Citi Field in New York, they filled the stadium for 2 nights on June 18th and 19th. At the Stade de Paris in Paris, their 2 concerts on July 26th and 27th drew approximately 120,000 fans combined, setting a record for the largest crowd ever assembled for a Korean act at that venue. They also performed at Estadio de Morumbi in Sao Paulo and Stadio Olimpico in Rome, both venues where no K-pop act had previously held a solo concert. In total, Stray Kids became the first K-pop act to perform at 11 different major stadiums across their touring regions. Now here's why these touring figures matter so directly for contract negotiations. Touring revenue is one of the most important variables in calculating an artist's commercial value because it demonstrates proven demand, not projected demand, not estimated demand, but actual money exchanged by actual people who showed up. When JYP Entertainment and Stray Kids sit down to discuss 2027 contract terms, the touring data provides hard, auditable proof of what the group can generate on the road, and a group that can gross over $250 million in a single tour cycle has leverage that extends well beyond what album sales alone would suggest. There's also the question of touring infrastructure. One of the advantages Stray Kids has built is a concert production system that works at stadium scale. Staging, lighting, sound, visual effects, and logistics that are already proven across multiple continents and dozens of shows. That infrastructure doesn't disappear between tours. It becomes an asset that makes future touring more efficient and more profitable. JYP knows that the next Stray Kids World Tour, whenever it happens, won't require starting from zero. The playbook exists. The venues are mapped. The demand is documented. That reduces risk and increases the predictable revenue a future contract can be valued against. And the revenue story doesn't end when the last stadium show wraps. In February 2026, the concert film Stray Kids: The Dominate Experience, produced by Live Nation Studios and documenting performances from the sold-out SoFi Stadium dates, premiered in theaters across 61 territories. It grossed approximately $19.1 million worldwide in its opening weekend alone, topping the global box office for that frame. In North America, it earned $5.6 million across 1,724 theaters. Internationally, it pulled in $13.5 million, making it the highest-grossing film outside North America that weekend. It set records for K-pop concert films in multiple markets, including $1.6 million in Germany, $1.4 million in the UK and Ireland, and $2.1 million in Mexico, where it ranked number 1 for the weekend. A concert film doing $19 million in a single weekend isn't just a nice bonus, it's evidence that the demand for Stray Kids live performances extends beyond the physical venue. Fans who couldn't get tickets or who want to relive the experience are willing to pay theater prices for a filmed version. That opens up an entirely additional revenue category: theatrical distribution, streaming rights, home video, and potentially future concert film deals. All of that feeds into the broader commercial equation JYP has to consider. The trajectory from $71.5 million, Maniac, to $30.6 million from just 10 dome shows, 5-star, to over $260 million, Dominate, represents growth that compounds the group's negotiating position with every cycle. If the next tour scales even modestly beyond Dominate, more dates, more markets, larger venue configurations, the gross could push well past $300 million. That kind of touring power gives Stray Kids something most artists never acquire: the ability to generate massive, verifiable revenue independent of any single album release or brand deal. But touring and album sales, as impressive as they are, capture part of the picture. The other major revenue lever? Brand partnerships. And that's exactly where Stray Kids have been quietly building another layer of value.
Number 4. Growing brand appeal. In the modern entertainment economy, an artist's value isn't measured only by how many records they sell or how many stadiums they fill. It's also measured by how many brands want their face on a campaign. Endorsement deals, ambassador titles, and fashion partnerships generate revenue that exists entirely outside of music sales and touring, and in many cases, these deals are more lucrative per hour of work than almost any other income stream an artist has. For Stray Kids, the brand portfolio they've assembled heading into 2027 is unlike anything most K-pop groups, or most musical acts of any genre, have ever built. Let's start with the headline fact. As of mid-2026, all 8 members of Stray Kids hold individual luxury fashion house ambassadorships. Every single one. That's not a common achievement. In K-pop, it's typical for 1, maybe 2, or occasionally 3 members of a group to land high fashion deals while the others pursue endorsements in beauty, tech, or lifestyle. Stray Kids have managed to place all 8 members with globally recognized fashion houses, and not second-tier labels either. We're talking about some of the most prestigious names in the luxury industry. Here's the full breakdown. Felix has served as a Louis Vuitton house ambassador since August 2023. That's not a seasonal campaign or a one-off appearance. House ambassador is among the highest tiers of partnership Louis Vuitton offers, reserved for individuals the brand considers central to its global image. Felix has appeared in campaigns, walked runways, and attended major events for the house. In 2025, he collaborated with Louis Vuitton on the silver lock kit jewelry collection benefiting UNICEF, adding a philanthropic dimension to the commercial relationship. Then in March 2026, he was also named a global brand ambassador and global icon for Adidas, plus a global ambassador for Hera Beauty. 1 member, 3 major global deals across fashion, sportswear, and beauty. Hyunjin, meanwhile, operates as a global brand ambassador for Versace, a partnership that Donatella Versace herself has publicly championed, calling him a true Versace man. His presence at Milan Fashion Week has been documented as generating significant media impact value for the brand, with his placements often reaching figures in the millions per appearance. He sat front row alongside Anne Hathaway at Milan Fashion Week 2024, a positioning that signals just how seriously Versace takes this partnership. Beyond Versace, Hyunjin also holds ambassador roles with Cartier, since 2024, Givenchy Beauty, since 2025, and Guess Jeans, since 2026. The breadth of that portfolio, spanning high fashion, fine jewelry, beauty, and denim, reflects a level of individual brand appeal that crosses multiple consumer categories. Bang Chan was named a Fendi ambassador in January 2025, following his appearance at the brand's men's Spring/Summer 2025 show in Milan. Lee No was appointed global brand ambassador for Gucci on June 30, 2025, following his own series of Gucci event appearances including the Cruise 2025 show in London. Seungmin became a global brand ambassador for Burberry on June 16, 2025, and has since topped the Top Key Voices rankings during London Fashion Week Autumn/Winter 2026, a metric that measures which individuals generated the most media engagement around the event. I.N was appointed a brand ambassador for Bottega Veneta in early 2025 and has represented the house at Milan Fashion Week. Changbin became the first ever global brand ambassador for Autry in February 2026, featuring in the American lifestyle brand's Spring/Summer 2026 campaign. And Han, who was named a Tod's ambassador in June 2026, completed the 8-for-8 sweep every member secured. Now, why does this matter for contract valuation? Because brand deals represent monetizable influence that a label can factor into revenue projections. When JYP Entertainment licenses a member's image and name to a luxury house, there's a fee involved, often in the millions of dollars per partnership annually for ambassadorships at this tier. With 8 members holding individual fashion deals, plus additional partnerships in beauty, sportswear, and lifestyle, the aggregate endorsement revenue flowing through Stray Kids is substantial. And unlike album sales or touring, brand deal revenue tends to be more stable and predictable. Contracts are typically multi-year, with guaranteed minimums. The group-level endorsements add another layer. Stray Kids have maintained an ongoing collective ambassadorship with Tommy Hilfiger, a relationship that reached a global spotlight when all 8 members attended the 2024 Met Gala together, dressed in custom Tommy Hilfiger looks. They were the first K-pop group in history to attend the Met Gala as a complete unit. That single appearance generated massive media coverage across fashion, entertainment, and cultural publications worldwide, proving that the group functions not just as 8 individual brand assets but as a unified cultural force with collective drawing power. Beyond Tommy Hilfiger, the group has held partnerships with Biore UV for a global sun care campaign, launched February 2025, Latte Pepero, renewed in June 2026, and A Bathing Ape, BAPE, with a product collaboration launched in October 2025. These partnerships span beauty, food, and streetwear, demonstrating that Stray Kids' brand appeal isn't confined to a single category or demographic. They can sell luxury watches, sneakers, skincare, and snack foods, often to the same audience. There's a compounding effect at work here that directly impacts contract value. Each new brand deal a member secures increases their individual market visibility, which in turn strengthens the group's overall commercial profile. Hyunjin appearing at Versace shows in Milan puts Stray Kids in front of fashion audiences who may never have encountered K-pop. Felix wearing Louis Vuitton in global campaigns reaches consumers who follow luxury fashion, not music charts. Seungmin topping engagement rankings at London Fashion Week introduces the group to European media ecosystems. Every one of these touchpoints expands the commercial surface area that JYP can monetize through future endorsement deals, through increased concert demand in new markets, and through the halo effect that high fashion associations create around album releases and merchandise. For contract negotiations, the implication is clear. Stray Kids aren't just a music act that brands happen to like. They're a diversified commercial platform where every member independently generates endorsement revenue while collectively amplifying the group's market presence. Finding another act where all 8 members carry individual luxury partnerships, and where the group as a whole maintains its own separate tier of brand deals, would be extremely difficult. That scarcity is leverage. JYP knows that if Stray Kids walk, they're not just losing a music group. They're losing 8 individual brand ambassador pipelines and the collective commercial identity that ties them together. But brand appeal, at its core, is powered by one thing: reach. And in today's music landscape, reach is measured most precisely by streaming numbers. That's exactly where we're going next. Number 3. Steadily rising streaming numbers. Album sales tell you who's buying. Touring tells you who's showing up. But streaming tells you who's listening every day, across the entire world, without spending a single additional dollar beyond their subscription. In the modern music economy, streaming data has become the universal language of reach. It determines playlist placement, algorithmic visibility, radio airplay, and ultimately, how much an artist is worth to platforms, labels, and advertisers. And Stray Kids' streaming trajectory isn't just healthy, it's on a sustained upward curve that shows no sign of leveling off. Start with Spotify, the world's largest audio streaming platform. As of August 2026, Stray Kids have accumulated over 15.2 billion total streams. To arrive at that number, you don't just need big debut weeks, you need a catalog that people return to, month after month, year after year. And the annual breakdown confirms exactly that pattern. In 2022, Stray Kids generated 1.71 billion Spotify streams within the calendar year. That was the year Ordinary landed, their first Billboard 200 #1, and the release that pushed them past the 1 billion total streams milestone faster than any other fourth-generation K-pop group at the time. By 2024, they ranked as the 3rd most streamed K-pop artist globally on the platform. Their release ATE achieved the biggest debut for a K-pop album on the Spotify global chart that year. And by the end of 2024, they had crossed a major cumulative milestone, 10 billion total streams across their entire discography. Then 2025 raised the bar again. Throughout the year, Stray Kids accumulated approximately 3.68 billion Spotify streams, making them the 2nd most streamed K-pop group on the platform for that calendar year. That's more than double what they generated in 2022. The growth isn't marginal. It's compounding. And 2026 is tracking even faster. By mid-April 2026, Stray Kids had already surpassed 1 billion Spotify streams for the year, reaching that threshold in roughly 3.5 months. When This and That dropped on August 7, 2026, it recorded over 12.8 million first-day streams, the biggest opening by a fourth-generation K-pop act that year, and surpassed 46 million streams within its first week. Currently, the group maintains approximately 10.7 million monthly listeners on the platform, a figure that fluctuates upward during comeback periods and remains substantial even during gaps between releases. Now let's look at individual tracks, because catalog depth matters just as much as new release performance when we're talking about long-term streaming value. God's Menu, released back in 2020, has accumulated over 542 million Spotify streams as of August 2026. In January 2026, it became the first song by a fourth-generation K-pop boy group to reach 500 million streams on the platform. Maniac, from 2022, sits at approximately 472 million streams. Thunderous, La 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 La, Backdoor, and S-Class all rank among their highest-performing tracks, each sitting comfortably in the hundreds of millions. And even collaborative releases maintain strong momentum. Lose My Breath featuring Charlie Puth crossed 100 million Spotify streams in May 2026. What's significant about these individual track numbers is that they span releases from multiple years. God's Menu is 6 years old and still accumulating meaningful streams daily. Maniac is 4 years old. The fact that these songs continue to generate hundreds of millions of streams long after their promotional cycles ended demonstrates something critical. Stray Kids' music has catalog longevity. These aren't tracks that spike on release and disappear. They're songs that listeners keep coming back to through playlists, through algorithmic recommendations, and through organic discovery by new fans entering the fandom. On YouTube, the picture is equally substantial. The official Stray Kids YouTube channel has surpassed 12.3 billion total views, supported by 24.7 million subscribers. Their most viewed music video, God's Menu, has crossed 574 million views. Thunderous sits at over 453 million. Backdoor has surpassed 410 million. La 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 and Maniac each exceed 350 million views, while S-Class broke 300 million in February 2026. When This and That dropped, its music video immediately topped YouTube's worldwide list of top trending music videos and became one of the group's fastest videos to reach early view milestones. YouTube views carry particular weight because they represent a different kind of engagement than audio streaming. A YouTube view means someone chose to watch a visual product, a music video with choreography, storytelling, and production design. It means deeper engagement, longer attention spans, and the kind of visual consumption that drives fashion trends, dance challenges, and cultural conversation. For brands evaluating whether to partner with a group, YouTube engagement is often more relevant than audio streaming alone, because it demonstrates that the audience is visually engaged and behaviorally active, not just passively listening. The streaming numbers also reflect and reinforce Stray Kids' presence at major international music festivals, which serve as discovery events that funnel new listeners into the streaming ecosystem. In July 2023, Stray Kids headlined Lollapalooza Paris, their first time headlining a Lollapalooza festival. In July 2024, they headlined BST Hyde Park in London, becoming the first male K-pop group to headline that event. 1 month later, in August 2024, they headlined Lollapalooza Chicago with a 90-minute set. Each of these festival appearances put Stray Kids in front of large, genre-diverse audiences, music fans who might never have sought out a K-pop act on their own, but who heard the performance, looked up the group afterward, and became new listeners. That pipeline from festival stage to Spotify search bar is one of the most effective audience acquisition tools in modern music, and Stray Kids have used it strategically. So what does all of this mean for the 2027 contract? Streaming revenue itself is a significant income category, both from Spotify royalties and YouTube ad revenue. But the real value of streaming data is what it represents: reach, engagement, and growth trajectory. When JYP sits down to calculate what Stray Kids are worth, the streaming numbers provide a real-time, continuously updated measurement of how many people on the planet are actively consuming their music. And the trend line, from 1.71 billion annual Spotify streams in 2022 to 3.68 billion in 2025 to a pace that could push even higher in 2026, tells a story of accelerating demand, not plateauing demand. In contract negotiations, the difference between an artist who is doing well and an artist who is still growing is worth hundreds of millions. Stray Kids streaming data puts them firmly in the second category. Every year, more people listen. Every release, the first day numbers climb. Every legacy track continues to accumulate streams at a pace that confirms the catalog isn't aging out, it's aging in. But numbers alone don't negotiate contracts. What truly tips the scale is power, and Stray Kids have something that gives them a level of leverage most groups simply can't match. That's where we're headed next. Number 2. SKZ holds negotiation power. Every point we've covered so far, global popularity, album sales, touring revenue, brand partnerships, streaming growth, those are the ingredients. But ingredients alone don't set a contract price. What sets the price is leverage. And leverage comes from one question: what happens if the artist walks away? For JYP Entertainment, the answer to that question is deeply uncomfortable. Because the financial data makes one thing painfully clear: Stray Kids aren't just an important act on the roster. They are, by multiple measurable standards, the company's primary revenue engine. Let's look at what JYP's own financial reports reveal. In the second quarter of 2025, when Stray Kids were actively running the Dominate World Tour, JYP Entertainment's quarterly revenue more than doubled year over year. Concert revenues hit record highs. Merchandise sales surged alongside live event activity. The company's financial outlook brightened across every segment. Then came the second quarter of 2026. Stray Kids were between tours. The Dominate tour had wrapped and the next tour hadn't launched yet. The result? JYP Entertainment reported a 15.1% year-over-year decline in total revenue, falling to 183.1 billion KRW. Operating profit dropped 41.4%. Concert revenue specifically fell 35.7%. Merchandise revenue dropped 34.5%. JYP explicitly attributed these declines to the high base effect created by Stray Kids' touring activity in the same quarter the previous year. Read that again. A single group's touring schedule, their presence or absence from the road, swung the entire company's operating profit by more than 40%. That's not a group that contributes to revenue. That's a group that defines it. When analysts adjust JYP's stock target prices, they do so based significantly on the projected activity levels of Stray Kids. When the group is touring and releasing music, the stock performs. When they're quiet, the market reacts downward. The company's financial health and Stray Kids' activity calendar are, at this point, functionally inseparable. JYP has lived through what happens when a major group doesn't renew. In January 2021, all 7 members of GOT7 chose to leave the agency when their contracts expired. The departure triggered a decline in JYP's share price and created a period of genuine market uncertainty. Investors questioned the company's growth trajectory. The loss of a top-tier act, one that generated significant revenue from touring, albums, and brand deals, left a visible gap in the company's financial structure. JYP managed the transition with relative grace, even allowing GOT7 to retain the group name, but the financial and reputational impact was real and well documented. Now imagine that scenario, but with Stray Kids. A group that generates over $260 million in a single tour cycle. A group that moves 7.8 million albums domestically in a year. A group whose catalog sales are growing 3.5-fold year over year. A group where every member holds individual luxury fashion ambassadorships. A group ranked number 2 on the IFPI Global Artist Chart. The financial shock of losing Stray Kids would make the GOT7 departure look like a minor adjustment. It would be an existential event for JYP's near-term financial outlook. And Stray Kids know this. They have to know this. The numbers are public. The financial reports are public. The stock reactions are public. When you're the act whose presence or absence determines whether your label's operating profit goes up 100% or down 41%, you hold the cards at the negotiation table, not the other way around. But Stray Kids' leverage extends beyond raw revenue dependency. There's a structural advantage that makes their position even stronger. They produce their own music. The production subunit 3 Racha, consisting of Bang Chan, Changbin, and Han, writes, composes, and arranges the vast majority of Stray Kids' discography. This isn't a vanity credit or a marketing angle. In February 2023, all 3 were promoted to regular members of the Korea Music Copyright Association, KOMCA, a designation based on their consistent, high-level creative contributions and the significant royalties their copyrighted works have generated. As regular KOMCA members, they hold voting rights within the organization. What this means in practical terms is that Stray Kids' music, the songs that fuel the album sales, the streaming numbers, the concert set lists, the brand campaign soundtracks, is intellectually owned, in part, by the artists themselves. The 3 members of 3 Racha hold copyright registrations on their compositions. They receive separate songwriting and composition royalties every time those songs are streamed, performed, broadcast, or licensed. This creates a dual income structure. All 8 members earn from group activities, while Bang Chan, Changbin, and Han also earn independently as credited creators of the music. For contract negotiations, this is a critical factor. A group that performs music written by external producers can be more easily replaced, at least in theory. The label can hire the same producers for a new act. But a group that writes and produces its own music? The creative identity walks out the door with the artists. If Stray Kids were to leave JYP, the company wouldn't just lose a performing act. It would lose the creative engine that generates the music that generated $260 million in tour revenue, 15 billion Spotify streams, and 40 million album shipments. There is no replacing that. The sound, the artistic identity, the creative continuity that Stay has bonded with over 8 years, all of it belongs to the group, not the label. The broader K-pop landscape also works in Stray Kids' favor. The industry has shifted dramatically in how renewals are structured. Blackpink pioneered a hybrid model in 2023, renewing group activities with YG while pursuing solo careers through independent labels. 17 completed a full group renewal that was widely viewed as a landmark deal. BTS renewed early and unified. Twice broke the 7-year jinx with a full group renewal in 2022. The precedent is clear. Established global acts negotiate from a position of strength, and the deals they secure typically include substantially improved profit sharing, often reaching 70% to 80% in the artist's favor, along with greater creative control, solo career autonomy, and flexible contract terms. Stray Kids enter this negotiation window with arguably the strongest hand any JYP act has ever held. They have the revenue numbers. They have the creative ownership. They have the market dependency. And they have 2 members, Bang Chan and Felix, who hold Australian citizenship and are exempt from mandatory Korean military service, ensuring that the group retains at least 2 globally recognized, English-speaking members at all times regardless of enlistment timelines. That continuity factor adds yet another layer of stability to their long-term commercial value. JYP Entertainment isn't negotiating with a group that needs the label. They're negotiating with a group the label needs. And when that dynamic flips, the value of a contract doesn't just increase, it transforms entirely. Which brings us to the final point. The single most important factor in understanding why Stray Kids' 2027 contract value could shatter expectations isn't any one number we've discussed. It's what happens when you put all of those numbers together. Number 1. Their value could far exceed expectations. We've gone through 6 points of hard evidence. Global popularity that spans every major continent. Album sales exceeding 40 million career shipments. A world tour that grossed over $260 million and ranked second globally behind only Beyoncé. 8 individual luxury brand ambassadorships plus group-level endorsement deals. Over 15 billion Spotify streams with year-over-year growth that's still accelerating. And a negotiating position so strong that JYP Entertainment's quarterly revenue visibly rises and falls based on whether Stray Kids are active or idle. Any one of those factors, on its own, would make a group valuable. What makes Stray Kids' situation different, and what could push their contract value beyond what even the most optimistic projections currently imagine, is the compounding effect of all of them operating simultaneously, in the same group, at the same time. This is the concept the music industry calls total artist value, and it's the metric that ultimately determines what a contract is worth. It's not just album revenue. It's not just touring revenue. It's the aggregate of every revenue stream an artist generates: recorded music, live performances, merchandise, brand endorsements, streaming royalties, songwriting and publishing income, content licensing, concert film distribution, and the secondary economic activity generated by their existence as a cultural brand. When all of those streams are flowing at high volume and all of them are trending upward, the mathematics of valuation stop being linear. They become exponential. Their 3 Ratcha members earned separate publishing and songwriting royalties on the vast majority of the group's catalog. And their catalog sales were growing 3.5-fold year over year, signaling that the fan base itself was still expanding. Now ask the question that JYP's negotiators are surely asking: if these are the numbers today, what do they look like in 2, 3, or 5 years if the current trajectory holds? Industry precedent gives us a framework for comparison. When BTS renewed with HYBE in 2023, analysts estimated the renewal down payment at over 21 billion KRW, roughly $15.6 million USD, per member. When Blackpink renewed group activities with YG in late 2023, YG's financial reports showed an increase of approximately 41.2 billion KRW in intangible assets in the reporting period surrounding the renewal. These are enormous figures. And they were set by groups whose peak commercial periods, particularly in touring and Western market penetration, overlapped significantly with Stray Kids' current trajectory. But here's the critical difference. Stray Kids' contract renewal already happened. In July 2024, all 8 members signed early, ahead of their original expiration date in early 2025. JYP Entertainment framed this as a decision rooted in strong mutual trust and shared vision. The market responded positively. The members expressed commitment. And the timing, announced one day before the ATE comeback and weeks before the launch of the Dominate Tour, was strategically designed to project stability and long-term confidence. So if the contracts were already renewed, why are we still talking about 2027? Because in this industry, contracts are living instruments. The terms negotiated in July 2024 were based on the data available at that time. But what's happened since? The Dominate Tour grossing over $250 million, the IFPI number 2 ranking, the Forbes number 1 designation, the $19 million concert film, the catalog sales explosion, the continued acceleration of streaming growth, all of this represents new data that changes the valuation equation. And in K-pop, contract renegotiation, supplemental agreements, and mid-term adjustments are not uncommon, particularly when an artist's commercial performance dramatically exceeds the projections used to set the original terms. Moreover, the structure of the deal matters as much as the headline figure. Modern K-pop renewals for top-tier acts increasingly include improved profit-sharing ratios, often reaching 70% to 80% in the artist's favor, up from the significantly lower splits that govern rookie contracts. They include solo career autonomy clauses, allowing members to establish independent labels or sign individual deals for acting, fashion, or music projects outside the group umbrella. They include creative control provisions that give self-producing groups like Stray Kids greater authority over concept direction, album production, and scheduling. The Blackpink model, where all members renewed for group activities but managed solo careers independently, is one template. The 17 model, where the full group renewed together, emphasizing collective identity and self-producing autonomy, is another. Stray Kids sit at the intersection of both, a self-producing group with strong collective identity and members who each carry individually significant commercial profiles through their brand ambassador portfolios. The most logical contract structure for a group with this profile would involve robust group activity terms plus expansive individual freedom, all backed by profit-sharing rates that reflect their demonstrated revenue-generating capacity. There's also a factor that most analyses overlook: the economic value of certainty. In an industry where contract expirations create stock price volatility, investor anxiety, and media speculation, a group that has already committed to staying provides the label with something money can't easily buy: stability. JYP can plan multi-year touring strategies, negotiate long-term brand partnerships, green-light content production pipelines, and project revenue forecasts to investors with confidence, all because Stray Kids have signaled they're staying. That certainty premium has real financial value, and it's reflected in the willingness of companies to offer more generous terms to ensure artists remain. But perhaps the single most important factor in understanding why Stray Kids' value could exceed expectations is the trajectory itself. They are not a group that peaked 3 years ago and is now managing a slow decline. They are a group that set new personal records in virtually every measurable category in 2025 and is on pace to do it again in 2026. This and that moved 3.28 million copies in its first week. Their Spotify streams are tracking ahead of 2025's pace. Their catalog sales are surging. They've just been named to headline another major world tour cycle. The growth hasn't stopped. And in the business of valuation, a growing asset is always worth more than a stable one, because the upside hasn't been captured yet. So what is the real value of Stray Kids' contract? No one outside of JYP's boardroom and the members' legal teams knows the exact figure. But when you assemble the evidence, 9 consecutive Billboard 200 number ones, 40 million career album shipments, $260 million in single tour revenue, 15.2 billion Spotify streams, number 2 on the IFPI Global Artist Chart, 8 luxury fashion ambassadorships, a concert film that topped the global box office, publishing royalties owned by the artists themselves, a financial dependency so profound that one quiet quarter dropped JYP's operating profit by 41%, and a growth curve that is still pointing up, the answer becomes clear: the value of this group, measured across every dimension that matters, is almost certainly larger than whatever number was written into that 2024 agreement. And if the current trajectory continues into 2027 and beyond, the gap between the contract's face value and the group's actual market worth will only widen. So here we are. 7 points. 7 layers of evidence. And every single one of them points in the same direction. Stray Kids' value heading into 2027 and beyond is not just high. It's the kind of high that forces the industry to recalibrate what a K-pop group can be worth. Let's take a step back and look at the full picture one more time, because when you see all of these data points side by side, the cumulative weight is striking. We started at number 7 with global popularity, a fanbase that spans North America, Latin America, Europe, Japan, Southeast Asia, and Oceania, supported by over 33 million Instagram followers, nearly 25 million YouTube subscribers, and 4 consecutive years in the top 10 of the IFPI Global Artist Chart, culminating in a number 2 ranking in 2025. Forbes named them the number 1 K-pop group of that year. This isn't regional success dressed up as global influence. This is verified, data-backed, multi-continental reach. At number 6, we looked at album sales, over 40 million career shipments across South Korea and Japan, consistent multi-million first-week performances, and the distinction of being the only artist in the US to place 3 albums in the top 10 best-selling CDs in 2025. Their catalog sales grew 3.5-fold year-over-year, proving that the fanbase isn't just maintaining, it's still expanding, still discovering, still buying. At number 4, we examined brand appeal, the fact that all 8 members hold individual luxury fashion ambassadorships with houses like Louis Vuitton, Versace, Fendi, Gucci, Burberry, Bottega Veneta, Cartier, and more. Add in group partnerships with Tommy Hilfiger, their history making appearance as the first complete K-pop group at the Met Gala, and individual deals spanning beauty, sportswear, and lifestyle categories, and you have a group that functions as a diversified commercial platform, not just a musical act. Number 3 covered streaming, over 15.2 billion career Spotify streams, a year-over-year growth rate that took them from 1.71 billion annual streams in 2022 to 3.68 billion in 2025, with 2026 tracking even faster. God's Menu became the first song by a fourth-generation K-pop boy group to cross 500 million Spotify streams. Their YouTube channel has surpassed 12.3 billion total views. And headlining slots at Lollapalooza and BST Hyde Park continue to funnel new listeners into the ecosystem. At number 2, we confronted the leverage question, the reality that JYP Entertainment's financial performance is so tightly linked to Stray Kids' activity that a single quiet quarter caused operating profit to drop 41.4%. The GOT7 precedent showed what happens when a top group leaves. Stray Kids' self-producing status through 3 Racha means the creative engine walks out the door with the artists if they go. And 2 members holding Australian citizenship provides a continuity buffer against military enlistment disruptions that few groups can match.
And number 1 tied it all together, the compounding effect. Every revenue stream is flowing at high volume. Every metric is trending upward. The group already renewed early in July 2024, but the data generated since then, the record-breaking tour, the surging catalog sales, the accelerating streams, the expanding brand portfolio, suggests that the group's actual market value has already grown beyond whatever terms were set in that agreement. Industry precedents from BTS and Blackpink show that renewal valuations for global tier acts run into the tens of billions of won. Stray Kids' numbers either match or exceed many of those benchmarks. So could the value of Stray Kids' 2027 contract truly reach a level that stuns the industry? Based on everything we've documented here, the honest answer is, the numbers suggest it already should. But here's what makes this conversation genuinely interesting. Contract value isn't just about what a group has achieved. It's about what they're projected to achieve next. And Stray Kids are not showing signs of slowing down. This and that just moved 3.28 million copies in its first week. A new world tour cycle is ramping up. Streaming growth is accelerating. Brand partnerships continue to multiply. The growth curve hasn't peaked. It hasn't plateaued. It's still climbing. One thing is certain. The greater their influence grows, the stronger their position in the global market becomes. And the stronger that position, the more any contract, past, present, or future, will need to reflect the true scale of what Stray Kids bring to the table. Now the question goes to you. Based on everything we've covered today, the sales, the tours, the streams, the brands, the leverage, the trajectory, what do you think Stray Kids' actual value would be if their contract terms were renegotiated or renewed again in 2027? Are we looking at figures that rival the biggest deals in K-pop history? Or could they set an entirely new benchmark? Drop your predictions in the comments. Let's see what Stay thinks. And if this video gave you something to think about, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We'll see you in the next one.